Greetings, my name is Kerry and welcome back to my channel. Today I have another recent reads video for you and I'm going to be talking about, I think it's 10 books today that I've read recently, just I haven't had a lot of time for filming. So this video will take us up to the start of the ebook Eradicator, and then for any books that I read during that readathon I'm going to be doing a reading vlog, so we won't do a recent reads video for those and resume the recent reads style videos afterwards, and we'll try and review those as I go along. So these are about 10 books I've read up to the start of that readathon, really. I'm way behind on my editing, so who knows how soon you'll see this, but I assume you'll see it before the vlog. Without further ado, let's get on to the books. So the first book I'm going to talk about today is Woman in the Picture by Catherine McCormack. Now I actually have just filmed a double review for this and another book, which I think you'll probably have seen before this. I will link to that in the description box for you so you can check out more of my thoughts on this. So I'm only going to talk about it very briefly now. This was a series of reflections kind of looking at art history and how women are portrayed in art and trying to recover the stories of some female artists that have been largely overlooked in history, but also questioning the male gaze and how do we respond when we look at the way women are portrayed in art as the viewer, as the onlooker. What does that art do to us and what should our relationship with those artworks be? So I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars, and if you want more of my thoughts, go check out that review. The next book I finished was a reread, and this was Record of a Spaceborne Few by Becky Chambers. This is the 3rd book in the Wayfarer series, continuing my reread of that series, ready to read for the first time the final book in the series, and I'm not entirely sure I'm ready for the series to be over. I really enjoyed this on the reread. I enjoyed it, I think, more the second time round than I did the first time around. I connected with the characters a bit more. I understood the mentality of the homesteader ships a bit better, I think. Perhaps also reading it more soon after reading the first and second books this time around, because we'd been waiting a while when this one came out for this next sequel, and I maybe had overhyped it a bit, and this time rereading it I just connected with it a lot more and enjoyed it a lot more. This is set shortly after the end of The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. All these books are companion novels, so they don't follow directly on, they follow different characters, but I would still recommend certainly reading Long Way to a Small Angry Planet before you read this one. I don't think it matters which order you read Closed and Common Orbit in this one, but I definitely would read Long Way to a Small Angry Planet first. I think it makes more sense that way, and you get a slightly better understanding because one of the characters in this book is a relative of one of the characters in Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, so you get a kind of better understanding of the story, I think, if you've read them in that order. Yeah, I thought it was really clever. I really liked the characters. Again, it's very character focused rather than plot focused. A lot of stuff does happen, but it's more about the characters and how they react to the different situations and what they learn from it, and that is what Becky Chambers is excellent at, and that is why I love to read her. So very excited, although also slightly nervous to read the final book in the series because then the series will be over. But I do have she's got another book coming out soon as well, so it's not the end for reading Becky Chambers, it's just the end of this series, but it makes me sad all the same because I love the series so much, but I will always have them to reread, I know. Anyway, so I gave this one 5 stars on the reread. I actually bumped up the rating. I'd given it 4 stars the first time around, but definitely enjoyed it more second time around and gave it 5 stars. The next book that I finished was The Pear Field by Nana Timishvili. I'm really sorry if I say that name wrong. I'm sure I do every time. This was from Perrine Press, who are one of my favourite indie publishers. They specialise in publishing translated works that wouldn't make it into English otherwise. This was translated from Georgian. It's set in Tbilisi in Georgia. It's set in what is called a residential school for intellectually disabled children, and it follows the main character Layla, who is old enough to leave the school but doesn't have anywhere to go, so she carries on working at the school, and it's about her and her interactions with other people in the school, the teachers and some of the other local residents of the area, particularly a young boy in the school, Irakli, who she's kind of taken under her wing and she's trying to give him a best future. This book is really bleak. I thought it was very well written. The author is a screenwriter as well, and she's had some success as a screenwriter. Her films have won a couple of awards, and it's got quite a visual feel to it, so it's really easy to imagine and picture all the scenes. It is quite filmic in that sense, if that makes sense. You can imagine it, you can see it as a film. There's a lot of trauma in this book. A lot of not nice things happen to a lot of the characters. I'm not going to give specific content warnings in this video, but I will link below to the Book Trigger Warnings website for all of the books I talk about today that are on that website, so that you can check if they are safe for you to read. I did struggle reading this book a little bit. I don't think I was quite in the right headspace to read all of it. Some of the stuff that happens is really horrible and really sad, but also having worked with orphans in Ukraine a couple of summers ago, not entirely unexpected based on that experience, having met orphans and underprivileged young people from Ukraine and Moldova and like all of that Eastern Bloc that used to be part of the Soviet Union. There's a lot of young people that are still struggling a lot and don't really have a lot of opportunities and often get abused and neglected and generally badly treated by the people that are meant to be looking after them. So yeah, fair warning if you want to read this book. I thought it was really beautifully written and it's very hard hitting, and so I would say it's worth a read, but just check out the content warnings before you read it if you're sensitive to any of the stuff in it. It's not an easy read. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I'm keeping it for now. I'm not entirely sure if it's a book that I want to reread in the future. We'll see. It's gonna go back to my parents' house with a load of other books in storage, and then when I unpack all my books in the future, that's probably when I'll decide about it. I was gonna say, like, enjoyed isn't the right word. I appreciated this book and I thought it did what it did very well, but I'm not sure it's a book that you can enjoy reading. Anyway, so I gave it 4 stars. The next book that I finished was Do You Dream of Terror 2 by Temi O. This one I had out from the library and I've already taken it back, and this was probably my favourite book that I read last month. This is set in an alternate universe around 2012, but in a universe where space travel is a lot more advanced than it is in our world. It's about a group of astronauts who are travelling to Terra 2, which is hoped to be a new Earth, and they're going to start a colony there. It's going to take them 23 years to get there, so there's a senior crew of 4 astronauts and then a junior crew of 6 astronauts who are all around kind of 18, 19, 20, and they've trained for years for this mission, and then right before the mission is due to leave, something tragic happens. I'm not going to spoil it, but it just means that the crew has to change at the last minute, so the people that were expecting to go aren't necessarily the same, and the book kind of explores a lot of the fallout from that, how everyone reacts to this traumatic event. It's all about the relationships within the ship. It's very much a character study of what happens when you put 10 people in a locked space together and they can't get away from each other. So I would say it's more character driven than plot driven, although a lot of stuff happens in this book. I just thought it was really cleverly written. I thought the exploration of the different relationships within the ship was really well drawn out. There's a lot of questioning from a lot of the characters of why were they picked for this mission, and so I thought all of that was explored really well, and I gave it 5 stars and I really highly rate it. Really highly recommend it. Okay, I knocked the camera over, so sorry if I've not got the same angle, but never mind. Next I finished Illusionary by Zoraida Cordova. This is the second book in the Hollow Crown series and completes that duology. So the first book, Incendiary, came out about a year ago. We read that for Space Sirens, so I was really glad to get this when it came out, and I buddy read it with a couple of the Space Sirens as well, and we really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good conclusion to the series. I'm not going to talk too much about this book in particular because I don't want to spoil the first book, but it is young adult fantasy. It is kind of inspired by the Spanish Inquisition and looks a little bit like colonialism and some issues to do with that. It's set in a world where there was a kingdom called Memoria where all the people had some form of magic, and there are 4 different types of magic, but that kingdom was overtaken by another country called Puerto Leones, and the king of Puerto Leones hates people with magic and is trying to essentially eradicate them. The books follow Ren, who is a young woman with a specific kind of magic that lets her steal other people's memories, and if she steals too many memories then she turns the person into a hollow, which is essentially a shell of a person. She is a member of the Moria resistance who are trying to fight back. So I can't tell you a lot more than that. The first book involves some spying stuff and some rebellion stuff and her trying to piece together who are her allies, and then there's like a big reveal at the end of the first book, and then the second book is entirely really based on that reveal, so I can't really tell you anything about this book without it spoiling the first book. But hopefully that's enough to whet your appetite and get you interested in these books. I thought these were really fun. I can't remember how much I rated Incendiary. I gave this one 4 stars. It was just a really fun, fast-paced YA fantasy. There was Interesting romance that wasn't necessarily the one I expected based on the first book, but that was alright. Didn't detract from the novel, and that's the most important thing for me, because unless I'm reading a romance book, which doesn't happen a lot, I often think that romance is an unnecessary addition, particularly to fantasy and sci-fi books. Sometimes it's done really well, and some of the other books I've talked about today, it is done really well. This one was alright, it didn't bother me. I actually ended up quite shipping the characters, which really surprised me, so it was handled pretty well. What I will say about this book is the portrayal of PTSD, very good. So Ren, both from her own memories but also from stealing other people's memories, has a lot of traumatic memories stored in her head. And the way the author describes how she processes and deals with those memories is very accurate to actual trauma therapy, considering this is a fantasy novel. The way she describes what Ren does to, like, escape from the trauma of those memories, very, very well done. Kudos to Zoraida Cordova for that. So I love this, I gave this 4 stars, and I really recommend this series. Next, I finished A Severe Mercy by Sheldon Van Auken, I'm not quite sure how to say his name. This book I borrowed from my dad ages ago and finally got around to reading it. It's kind of a memoir of the author's love story with his wife, how they met and fell in love and got married and lived together, and then she sadly, tragically died quite young. And so then kind of the second part of the book is how he processes that grief and deals with that loss. They were good friends of C.S. Lewis, and so correspondence for C.S. Lewis is included and his impact on their relationship, and also a bit of exploration of how they became Christians and what that meant to them as a couple and as individuals, and how that helped Sheldon Van Auken with his grief. Yeah, I quite enjoyed it. It was a little bit, what's the word, occasionally a bit saccharine, occasionally felt a little bit melodramatic, like they label aspects of their relationship and it's always capitalised. They talk about like the shining barrier of their relationship, and I can't remember what the other things were, but it's like occasionally a little bit annoying. But actually I thought the way it explored these big issues of like life and faith and grief and romance and relationship and how do you handle relationship, I think there's a lot to be learned from it in that sense. It felt a little bit dated in places. It was written in the 70s about a relationship that happened in the 50s or 40s and 50s. They got married around the time that America joined the Second World War. The author was American. Some aspects felt a little bit dated, but for anyone who's interested in C.S. Lewis and his writing and his influence, this is a really interesting book about his impact on a particular couple, and so I really quite enjoyed it. The next book that I finished was The Fated Sky by Mary Robinette Kowal. This is the second book in the Lady Astronaut series and picks up a few years after where the first one ended. And so again, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this book in particular because I don't want to spoil much that happens in the first book. It's another alternate history sci-fi, this time set in around the 50s and 60s. In the first book, there's a meteor impact on Earth, and that disrupts the climate completely, causes catastrophic climate change, which kind of speeds up the space race. So in a similar way to Terra 2, it kind of has pushed human technology a little bit further on and has them doing things that we are not yet doing. So I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars in the end. I think I maybe would have enjoyed it more if I hadn't just read Terra 2. It was very similar plot line in a lot of ways, and I thought some of the stuff was handled better in Terra 2, but I did enjoy this. I had a lot of affection, particularly for Alma, the main character, and the situation she found herself in, and I find her a really relatable character. She has anxiety, particularly social anxiety, so a lot of her experiences were really relatable for me. I just sometimes felt that the author was trying too hard to cover too many issues. It just felt sometimes a little bit that we were being hit round the head with it. It is really important to cover these issues, but I mean, particularly with the time period, so it's looking at feminism and civil rights and racism and all of those sorts of things. But then there's also stuff about polio as well and various other things, and it just sometimes felt like a little bit too much, and that if she'd focused on 1 or 2 things then it would have come across better. But that's just a slight thing. Like, I thought all the issues were handled really well. I just sometimes felt like there were too many things going on. But all in all, I really enjoyed it, and I'm really looking forward to carrying on the series, and I do recommend it if you enjoy sci-fi. I think I enjoyed the first one a little bit more, but I thought this one was really good as well, and I'm really keen to see where it goes next. So that one I borrowed from the library and have taken back. And the next one also I borrowed from the library and have taken back, which was There's Something About Sweetie, which is the second book in the Dimple and Rishi verse by Sandhya Menon. This is kind of a companion novel. It does pick up from where Dimple and Rishi left off, but following different characters. So it follows Rishi's brother Ashish and his love interest Sweetie. They are very different characters from Dimple and Rishi, which I thought was brilliant. They're both athletes in different sports. Ashish is a basketball player and Sweetie is a track runner, an athlete. Ashish has had a string of white girlfriends and his parents haven't entirely improved, and then one of them ends up breaking his heart and he kind of loses his mojo, gets really out of sorts with himself, and it's affecting his confidence and his ability to play basketball. So he decides he needs to do something about it, and then one of his friends suggests that he lets his parents set him up, because his parents set up Dimple and Rishi and that really worked out quite well. So he reluctantly agrees and they suggest Sweetie. Sweetie, on the other hand, she is plus sized, but she's also very healthy. She's an athlete and she has a very strained relationship with her mother, who thinks that she needs to lose weight before she can be happy, whereas Sweetie is trying to prove to herself that she can be happy as she is and she doesn't need to lose weight to achieve all the stuff that she wants to do. Sweetie's mother is reluctant to agree to this setup, but Sweetie wants to go ahead with it anyway. So kind of the story kicks off from there, with both of the characters trying to find their way, improve their confidence and figure out what they want from life and from a relationship. And I just thought it was really sweet. It was really lovely, really gave me an endorphin hit. It was just, yeah, very beautifully done, very sweet, very lovely. I've already said that. And I really enjoyed this. I think there's one more book that is set in the series, another companion novel, and then I know that Sandhya Menon has written other contemporaries, and I think she's also written some YA fantasies as well. I'm not entirely sure. Well, she's written another series as well, and I'm not sure if it's fantasy or contemporary, but I really enjoy her writing. I really enjoy her exploration of American Indian culture, as in people of Indian descent living in America as opposed to Native Americans. And so I'm keen to read more of her books to keep enjoying her writing and the world she creates. So I gave this one 4 stars. Next, I finished 101 Dalmatians by Dodie Smith. This I picked up for my book a day challenge because it's very short. And I bought this earlier in the year because I really want to read the sequel, The Starlight Barking, because my friend Judith from Dead Good Book Reviews talks about it a lot and goes on about it and how weird it is. I'm gonna get to that soon, I promise, now that I've read this one, because I never read this book, so I really wanted to read this one first before I carry on with the series. You're probably familiar with the story. It differs slightly from the Disney version. I understand why they made some of the changes they made and not why they made some of the other ones. It's been a really long time since I've seen that film though, so I want to watch it again now. But I thought this was really sweet, really fun. I loved the dogs information relay that they like pass on information to each other when they're barking, and yeah, and the whole sort of concept of pets having a language that humans don't understand. I thought a lot of it was really clever and really fun and really sweet. If you haven't read it, I do recommend it. And I gave that one 4 stars too. Not really a lot to say about it really. I think most people are probably fairly familiar with the story of that one. And then finally I reread The Stolen Kingdom by Bethany Atazadeh. This was our Space Irons pick for June. So I read this just in time for the live show, which at time of filming hasn't happened yet, but by the time you see it, it will have. So I will link to the live show for you in the description box so you can check out all of our thoughts. We tend to do a non-spoilery bit to start and then a more spoilery bit. This is the first in a series of young adult fantasy retellings of fairy tales. So this one is based on Aladdin, but looks at it in a very different way. So it follows Ari, who is the princess of a kingdom called Hodafez. The neighbouring king Amir is trying to take over her kingdom. A lot of people in this world have what they call a gift, which is kind of magic, and it's if they are descended from or have Jinni blood in them. So Ari has a gift of mind reading. She can hear other people's thoughts, but she doesn't really have a lot of control over it. Amir, the neighbouring king, has a gift of persuasion, which he uses to force people to do his will. But the Jinni have a very strict code about how their gifts should be used, and Amir is breaking that code. The other significant thing in this novel is that the society considers it okay for men to have gifts, but not for women to have gifts. So if a woman is found to have a gift, then that gift is removed from her and it usually results in her death. Meanwhile, a lot of the men who have gifts are misusing them. It's quite feminist in that sense, and I that's one of the things I like about this book in this series. The next book in the series I need to reread soon is a Little Mermaid retelling, then the third one is Beauty and the Beast retelling, and the fourth one has just come out, is a Sleeping Beauty retelling. So I need to reread books 2 and 3 so I can read a book 4, but I'm really hyped to do that now. I'm going to try and get to them soon. Yeah, I just really enjoyed this. I'm not going to say a lot more about it than that. I'm really glad to have reread it. I really love this series. This author is really good. Bethany Artesada is a author tuber. Go and check out her channel if you would like to know more about her and her books. I still gave this 4 stars on the reread because I really enjoyed it, but it just isn't quite a perfect book for me. I can't remember what I gave the other books in the series actually. I maybe gave the third one 5 stars. The third one is definitely my favourite, I think. Yeah, I gave the third one 5 stars. It's the one I've enjoyed most of the series so far. It's taken me a long time to talk about all of those books, so I'm going to stop there. Thankfully. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. Let me know some of what you've been reading recently, or if you just want to let me know that you've been here, you can leave me a puppy emoji in the comments in honour of 101 Dalmatians. You can also like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already. You can also follow me on my social media. All that information is listed for you in the description box below. But that's it for today, so thank you so much for watching and I will talk to you again soon. Bye!